Let's introduce your president, Emma Mullen-Marmion.
Hello, Sarah. How are you? And welcome, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome to Newry Chamber of Commerce and Trade's annual celebration of International Women's Day 2021. I am so excited and delighted to be hosting the second International Women's Day of our Chamber's long and proud 200 years existence, with a tint of sadness at the realisation that this will be my last one as your president. At the beginning of the year, we were full of optimism and hope that we would be raising a toast once again with you all to mark a celebration of women's contribution in the local community, with, I guess, an equal realism that this year, like no other, would most likely mean that we were sitting in our homes around the country. So as we have lunch together, I hope you take a little bit of encouragement and a lot of inspiration from our wonderful speaker today, Deborah Somorin, in the very capable hands of Sarah Travers. Deborah, I would like to warmly welcome you to Newry City in our virtual space today. We are delighted to have you, excited to hear your story, and hope to welcome you back in the autumn to meet you in person. For me, today is a day where we give space for stories like Deborah's that put women at the centre, where so very often, I guess, we gladly stay behind the scenes, often the movers and shakers and the doers and the nurturers. But we push other people forward to take the limelight, and often we stay behind the camera for photographs rather than stay in them. It's a day where we remember the women who have inspired us and tell stories of those who have shaped our lives. Many of you would have heard me speak about my sister Monica, who I know will be absolutely delighted that she has made it into my speech today. Monica is an incredible part of our family. Monica's eyes light up when you walk into the room, and she can make you feel so incredibly welcome when she sees you. She has the unique ability to call out the truth of situations, to know just the right sentence to say to make you feel better, and equally to call you out on your faults and your disabilities when you need it. Like all of us, Monica lives with her abilities and disabilities. And yes, Monica has cerebral palsy. It is no surprise growing up as a young carer that Monica influenced the career path for so many in my family. My sisters dedicated their careers to caring for others in the health profession, and Monica shaped mine in a different way, to recognise the contribution and value of every individual, regardless of religion, ability, marital status, ethnic background and gender, and how through the right support and environment, how you can allow space for everyone to reach their fullest potential. Growing up, we acknowledged each other's differences and abilities. We acknowledged where ability and disability was physically evident, and equally we became aware when mentally it was not so much so. We recognised that every person has unique and different needs, and how for us to be treated equally meant that some of us maybe needed more help and support than others. It is no surprise then, as a young child, I could understand that the only reason for people to be treated differently was for them to receive more help to reach their potential and to contribute fully. And how the oppression of women or of people who are different from us only deprived the human race of untold stories and untapped potential, intelligence, energy and spirit that the world would never know. It is why events like International Women's Day are so important, and why giving space to allow for stories like this to be told is so crucial. The theme for International Women's Day this year is to choose to challenge. It acknowledges that a challenged world is an alert world, and that from challenge comes change. It calls for every individual to commit to choose to challenge inequality, to call out bias, to question stereotypes, and to help to forge an inclusive world for tomorrow. A few weeks after becoming president, I met Mary McAleese in Dublin, and I told her all about our chamber, that we were 200 years old, and how for the first time in our history, we had two women at the helm of our chamber as president and vice president. I asked her advice, what advice she would give me, and she told me the importance of authentically being me, not imitating others, and not comparing myself to others who had gone before me and what they had done. She said that you stand on the shoulders of those who went before you, and you widen the staircase a little wider for those who come after you. And these words have been ringing in my ears ever since. So much so now that before every speech and every meeting, even as I sit with my children or as I start my day, and I ask, how can I widen the staircase a little wider today for those who are coming after me tomorrow? And for many of us in our virtual room today, that is the motivation. How can we widen the staircase for our young people coming after us in creating an inclusive world for them? How can we widen the staircase for our young women to close the gender pay and opportunity gap? How can we create an equal playing field for our future generations to meet their fullest potential, male or female, whatever their needs, abilities, or disabilities? For the sad reality is that according to the World Economic Forum, none of us will see gender parity in our lifetime, nor is it likely that many of our children will either. The role model effect of women reaps dividends at the top of in terms of leadership and wages, and is continuing to make impacts at board level. In 2021, women sit as board members in 27% of boards in the UK, but still only 17% in Ireland. So there is much work still to be done. Women's participation in the wider labour market has stalled, and financial disparity is increasing. Regretfully, the wrath of COVID in years to come will be felt here too. It is said to wipe out 25 years of increasing gender inequality. For many, the first lockdown was a reality buried deep within our minds. It was a mythical illusion of life with children at home, making banana bread, walks in the sunshine, and swimming in lakes and seas. It was a magical life that had hidden behind our work, school, youth club runs, yoga classes, doing the groceries, you name it. However, as lockdown continued, so too came a clouded mist of life demands that started to overcrowd free time. Locally, we have heard firsthand how women are doing significantly more domestically and in providing family care because of the pandemic, which in turn is likely to impact upon job and education opportunities now and in the future. Our vision for the Chamber is to be a representative voice for everyone in our business community. We represent over 200 members and the many thousands of people that they employ. We are a voice that promotes business and opportunity, and that promotes Newry as a leading location to work, live, and to be happy. Awareness of workforce strategies will go a long way to break the wave, as well as strategies that improve education, skills, or reskilling to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution in data and AI, diverse hiring, and creating inclusive work cultures. But if anything is to come from the coronavirus pandemic, it is that we still have work to do on the cultural and social attitude towards the relative amount of time women spend in unpaid domestic work and care, and the burden that household care duties has placed on them. Workplaces can continue to look at how they support the half women to live a full life. Those that feel they live half in professional wear from the waist up and half loungewear, half at home and half at work, half me and half of who work think I should be, given 100% effort, but feeling that that's still not enough. Coming out of COVID, like Monica and my family, maybe it is about understanding that everyone has different needs, different backgrounds, different circumstances that will mean they need different support to balance the playing field. As Edwina Flynn said to me this week, we are all in the same storm, Emma, but maybe we all don't have the same boat. And what COVID did demonstrate is an emerging community and emerging women, resilient and ready, with strength and valour they have shown through their tough skin, that we can show up again and again, and we can rise despite everything that is going on around us. That even this experience is one that has moulded me, and maybe that is the silver lining and the miracle. Today, I wish you all a very happy International Women's Day, whether you are at home with your children, homeschooling on the other side of the table, or in work with your colleagues 2 meters apart. I hope you recognise your story today, your contribution and the difference that you are making, and celebrate the emerging women of COVID-19. I now hand you over to Sarah Travers to hear the remarkable story of Deborah.
I know we're not supposed to applaud, but Emma, thank you. That was absolutely gorgeous. And I know I'm not, yeah, we can all applaud in silence there. You set the tone beautifully. You know, explain to us why this is so needed. You have told us that we need to choose to challenge, just like Monica. We need to be our authentic selves and we need to call it out when it's not right. That really is a wonderful message. Edwina says, beautiful opening, Emma. You're certainly widening the staircase. Jason says, you're an inspiration. Thank you very much, Bernie. Very inspiring, Emma. So thank you for a superb job to start our International Women's Day event. And I definitely feel uplifted already. Okay, we want to take a bit of a, it's not a selfie anymore, is it? What is it? We want to take a picture of everybody before we get you to turn your cameras off. So, Catherine, I hope that if everybody looks to the camera now and smiles or does something nice, will we all wave? Hi.
Perfect. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
There you go. Brilliant. Okay, so we can tweet those pictures, and then I think we've got 101 participants today, which is just absolutely fabulous. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, moving on, because I know we've only got such a short time today. We are now going to introduce our guest speaker today. So if you wouldn't mind popping off your cameras, just so that you can really see Deborah. Deborah Somorin is our special guest today. By way of introduction, Deborah is currently employed by EY, or Ernst Young in Dublin, as an assistant manager on EY's People Advisory Services. She's also a qualified chartered accountant and sits on the Chartered Accountants Ireland Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Now, on Deborah's road to a successful career with EY, she has overcome many personal challenges to achieve her ultimate personal ambition of becoming a chartered accountant. And if you don't know Deborah's story, you'll hear why. She really has been incredible. Not content then with just a career as an accountant, she has also drawn on her unique experiences to found an incredible charity called Empower the Family, or ETF. Deborah built an experienced team to help her fulfill her vision for the charity, and ETF currently has plans to deliver Ireland's first social student housing in North Dublin by September 2023. This is really for parents who need childcare and need support to continue with their education. Deborah's work with Empower the Family has earned her a spot on the 2020 Forbes 30 Under 30 list in the social entrepreneurs category. So, Deborah, after that introduction, it is lovely to meet you. If you want to unmute yourself there and join me now in conversation, you're very, very welcome to Newry, albeit virtually. Have you been to Newry?
I've never been to Newry, but I'm very much excited to go and visit. Newry and Derry are two of my top spots to visit now over the next year, whenever it's safe to do so.
Good. Well, we'll welcome you with open arms when we can. Deborah, we talked there a little bit about Empower the Family. You know, it's based on personal experience. Everything, and I suppose that's the same for everyone, everything that you've experienced in your life has led you to this point. But tell me, first of all, exactly what the charity aims to do. It's 2023 you're aiming for, obviously with COVID and everything, I'm sure plans were stalled a bit.
Yeah, very simply, we're delivering student accommodation for single parents who are in university, and for young people coming out of state care. Long term, we just want to provide student accommodation for people who are from disadvantaged communities. If there's student accommodation for people who can pay for it, why shouldn't there be student accommodation for people who can't afford to pay for it? Especially if they have the exact same determination and ability to get the exact same grades and go off and lead pretty prosperous lives. So we want to be that bridge between social and affordable housing. Essentially, that's That's empower the family. So we're building a 50-bed development out in Ballymun, in North Dublin, and it's due to open in September 2023. Where we've had great support from DCC in relation to that project, and they supported us. They backed us to become an approved housing body. So we've been registered with the Department of Housing with that brief of delivering Ireland's first social student housing development. So that's my baby.
That's about it. It's an incredible objective, and it is all rooted in your own personal experience. So I suppose we need to take you right back. You were born in Nigeria, is that correct?
No, I was actually born in Westminster.
Yeah.
He was actually born in Westminster. It's one of those really funny stories, because it's one of those things where your parents tell you these stories to make you feel special when you're a kid. And I was apparently born in the hospital, the first black baby born in the hospital where all the royal babies are born. It's definitely not true. I was born in '93. You know, that's not true. But you know, that's my little thing. So yeah, born in England. Lived between England and Nigeria for a number of years before moving here when I was 10. And yeah, settled down in Naas in Kildare. Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I cut you off there. I don't know if there was more to that. I'm so sorry.
I think there's a lot happened before you actually got to Naas in County Kildare. It wasn't exactly an easy childhood for you. You talked about going between Nigeria and England. So what was early life like for you?
Yeah, it was pretty normal, to be completely honest with you. It was really after I turned 10 that it became quite difficult. But, you know, I had a pretty normal upbringing, is the way that I would personally describe it, to be completely honest with you. Of course, I suppose myself and my mom had a quite difficult relationship, and my dad's a pastor, so very religious upbringing, and it's in the Bible that you're supposed to beat your kids. You know, it's in there. And so previous to 10, while my home life and my family was pretty normal, you know, the beatings were also normal, because that's part of African culture. And I'm sure, and when talking to my friends, there was also part of Irish culture once upon a time, getting the wooden spoon out and everything else. So you know, it was just that was what was there. But I suppose with me and my mom, we constantly butted heads. We just never really understood each other. And my dad I was a complete daddy's girl, so my dad became my protector. Whenever those beatings went too far, he would step in. And I suppose it all kind of went pear-shaped when, you know, she did the right thing for her, you know, and probably for us in trying to stand on her own 2 feet when she decided to leave him. But he was no longer there as my protector, you know, after I turned 10.
So was your parents' relationship quite violent between them?
It was quite difficult, yeah. So, you know, there's definitely times that I would have I think that the majority of the violence, to be fair, was directed towards me. Obviously, towards the end of their marriage, you know, there's a lot more arguments, there's a lot more fighting, and then you're seeing a lot more of that kind of violence of it. There was one day where I don't know what had predated it. My mum said my dad had hit her, and so she hit him back. But that whatever way she hit him back, he is still going and getting eye appointments for that injury 20 years later. So that's just a random story of my childhood and the realities of my childhood. But you know,
so you came to Ireland. Your mum literally flitted in the night. And how many of a family? How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Yeah, so I have, there's 3 of us, so there's actually 12, 13 of us altogether from my dad, but from my mum, from our tranche of the football team, there was 3 of us at the time, and then my mum was pregnant. So when she moved over here, she was actually pregnant. We didn't know that, and I don't know, I don't know if she must have known that, and I don't know if that was maybe one of the big things that maybe inspired her to leave, because she probably just couldn't do any longer. I think my mum had gotten married to my dad with the assumption that if they got married, they would live in England permanently. And over the years, you know, that's the back and forth between England and Nigeria. You know, my dad's a pastor. My dad's 76 now. So he was at a much later stage in his life where he wanted to be home with his family. He wanted to be home with people in an environment he felt more comfortable. So that was where that tug of war kind of came in. Was she always wanted to be in England and he wanted to be in Nigeria, and eventually it kind of came to a head. Oh, sorry.
You ended up in Ireland, which is probably where no one had thought they would be living. What was that like for you when you arrived?
Yeah, so yeah, no, I moved to Naas and in Kildare. And Naas was a lovely little place to move to. We lived in this really lovely estate called Sundays Well, and that was it was such an interesting experience because, as I said, I've been in this very conservative upbringing up until then, and I kind of had freedom. I thought it was kind of a benefit and a negative that my dad wasn't there. In that, I really wanted to test those boundaries, and that led to a significant deterioration with me and my mum in terms of our relationship, and eventually it became unsafe for me to be able to still stay living with her. And that was quite difficult. That was quite difficult to be going through that. The first time I went into care, I was 11, and the first time I slept in a homeless hostel, I was 13. So that was quite hard. And the first time when I got pregnant, I was 14. So it was a pretty quick deterioration from my family is just a little bit maybe broken to the worst things that you can probably imagine. Some of the worst things you can imagine a child going through.
I mean, it's horrific, and it's your story, it's your truth. You know this, but for a lot of people listening today, they're hearing this for the first time, and something you just said there completely jumped out, that you were homeless and living in a homeless hostel, aged 13 years old. Yes, we heard you got pregnant at 14, but if I could just talk about the homeless experience, you're uprooted from the home that you knew, you arrive in Ireland. Would it be fair to say you wouldn't have seen many other people similar to you in Ireland? And how were you greeted when you got there? What was your experience of the welcome that Ireland gave you?
Yeah, so I think overall it was a really lovely welcome. I think the town that I moved to didn't have. I think there were a lot of things going on when I moved here that I wasn't aware of. When I moved here, it would have been around the time of the 2004 referendum in the Republic that took away the right of children who were born in Ireland to be Irish unless one of their parents was also Irish. And so from listening to politicians and talking to politicians about that referendum, that seems to have been a huge catalyst for racism, or at least misinformation about people who were not born here, maybe originally. And that's where, all of this stuff around people are coming over here to take our jobs, like that was that era of things. So I think that in general, the majority of people were grand, but I think that there were things that maybe I would have heard in school that people would have said to me that they just didn't even maybe understand themselves, because they were probably picking it up around a dinner table the way people were picking things up around Brexit and all of that fun stuff, because I know it's certainly for and Donald Trump's election, because I know certainly for my own son, he started going through a huge amount of bullying in his school, and it was a new school. It's only open in the last 10 years. And I had to pull him out of the school because they just didn't even know how to properly deal with it. So I put him in a new school, and he's so settled and happy there. But I suppose I understand that some of the stuff that some of the ways that maybe people treated me, they might not have understood what they were saying. They were just, there was this hugely polarizing political kind of landscape there around foreigners and a mentality around scarcity of resources that just wasn't true, but that again is part of that misinformation that generally goes out around foreigners. It's quite disappointing, but it was an interesting experience. But in general, it was positive. There were obviously, there were obviously some bits that weren't as positive, but overall, I was thankful that it was positive. And I think for me, it was finding the people who, whenever negative things were going on, like whenever I was in a system of care where, the best thing for me wasn't necessarily the plan that was in place, finding the person who would help me get around that and help me get to somewhere that was better and safer, or get into a school that was, as opposed to homeschooling, those types of things. The people who helped me do that, I'm incredibly thankful for. So I can't say it was a negative experience, because it was overall positive, and the positives outweighed the negatives.
To find yourself in the care system, so taken away from, you've lost your dad, then you know, you're separated from your mum. Can you remember that moment of when you realized you were now a child in care?
Obviously, I think, you know, the first day, the day it's happening. I mean, I got brought into care, you know, generally I was sitting in a Garda station, you know, because that's generally how it starts. You know, some things happen with your mum or whatever. And in my case, my mum wouldn't let me in. It was like midnight. I missed curfew. As I said, I'm completely putting my hands up that I was a brat. I can't. My son is 12. I can't imagine him staying out till 8, never mind midnight. But I was really pushing those boundaries at the time, and I had my friends were a lot older than me. Anyway, so she was trying to play hardball, and she poured some water off the top floor window, and I was drenched. I was freezing, and so I went over to my friend's house because, you know, after about an hour standing out there, I thought, you know, there's no way I'm being let in. So I went to a friend's house. The friends called the police, and then the police to say, listen, there's a kid here. She can't go home. We don't know what's going on. I think they went to visit my mum, and my mum said, nope, I'm not letting her back in. Probably to try and teach me a lesson, not knowing what it would lead to in the end. And, you know, I got brought to an emergency foster home. That was the first time when I was 11. So you're sitting in it's the middle of the night, you're sitting in a Garda car with guards, you know, and they're ringing up all of these people. I can't remember if it was a guard or it was a social worker, and after hours social worker that drove me to the foster home. But either way, it's strangers. It's people you've never met in your life who are bringing you to somebody else's house to sleep in their house. So there's no scenario that doesn't become terrifying for an 11-year-old, especially when.
Deborah, was it the right thing to do you think?
It was absolutely the right thing to do. And this is it, like, even though this is something that's keeping you safe and it's bringing you to somewhere that's safe, there is an absolute realization from the minute you get handed over to an aftercare social worker, the minute you're sleeping in that foster care bed, that your life is different now. You know, there's a realization that you don't have that normal family setup, that security of someone who loves you unconditionally, you know, as a guardian or parent, and it's quite tough, but it is absolutely was the best thing for me at the time, and it kept me safe, you know.
You had good experiences, you said, as well, but, you know, again, going back to that point where you said you ended up at 13 in a homeless hostel. I just can't imagine. And you're a mum now, as we know, and you couldn't imagine your child being in a homeless hostel. What was the setup like? How did you live?
So the way that it works in a homeless, the nighttime only hostel, anyways, that I got first brought to, it's called the Froy House. It's on the Quays, and it's got a big red door, and just to make it even more scary. And the way that it works, you get dropped off there at nighttime or whatever, and you sleep there in the morning. There's breakfast downstairs. Everyone goes downstairs for breakfast. But I suppose for me, that it was a really high risk. That is a really high risk unit. Accommodation, whatever way you want to call it, but I had to be locked into my room at nighttime to keep me safe from the other people that were there. And the journal.ie did a freedom of information request about a year ago of the complaints that had been submitted within that hostel, and they were horrific. I found out what was on the other side of that door, and it wasn't nice. It was heroin addicts, it was sexual assaults, it was nothing, it was physical assaults. It was nothing that was positive, and that, you know, a 13-year-old child should have to be around. So I got locked in my room, and if I wanted to go to the bathroom, a staff member would come and bring me to the bathroom in the middle of the night, just to make sure nobody else could hurt me. Yes, there's breakfast in the morning, and again, you know, there were staff members everywhere while you got breakfast. Then someone from Focus Ireland came to meet me, and I suppose thankfully at the time I was probably one of the youngest, if not the youngest person there. But now that's not the case. You know, there's 12-year-olds that are put in that situation. But the way that it works is it's nighttime only, so you have to leave in the morning. So I left with this woman, Shelley, and thankfully she didn't feel right letting me wander the streets of Dublin. As I said, I'd grown up in Naas. I was coming from Naas, Kildare. So being in the city was going up to the big smoke, and it was not, you know, by myself. I would have been eaten alive. That's the simple reality of it. So she let me stay in their offices during the day until I could go back to my hostel in the evening. And she would literally every single day, she didn't need to do this because all she was supposed to do was check in on me and give me food vouchers and then send me off on my way. That was her brief. but she did that. And every single day she'd ring up all the hostels, get me a bed, and then walk me back to my hostel and pick me up every day, every single day. And I remember it was cold, and I just remember being really thankful I had somewhere warm to go, and that I didn't have to walk around the city centre for myself. And then I got placed in, after I stayed in Lefroy House for a few nights, and then I got moved to another nighttime only hostel, and this one was for girls only, which was quite, I suppose, a bit safer. And I stayed there for 9 months altogether. I got a more secure bed after a certain period of time. I think after about a month, I got a secure bed where I didn't have to leave in the middle of the night, and then I was able to go and find a school and those types of things. But it was a hugely that was in itself a terrifying experience, because you're living with people who are going through different things, and it meant that I got the brunt of that sometimes, you know. And it's actually quite funny, because some of it I actually blocked out. I did. It's so funny that I can talk about these things so freely now. You're seeing the result of a lot of therapy. But I'm obviously writing a book, and I did a freedom of information request from TUSA to get all my files. And one of the things that came up was this report about something that happened to me. And you know, my foster dad, I call him my foster dad, and we'll get to that in a minute, but he was asking me about it. He was like, do you remember this, this, and this? And I'm like, I have zero recollection of that happening. And it was only more and more after he talked about it. He's like, oh God, yeah, that did happen, you know? But there's just certain really traumatic events, you know, something like that, that it was so important that there was so much documentation on it from a social work perspective that I didn't even remember until he kind of gave me a lot more details about it. So that's just to give you a flavor of what that experience was like. It was clearly something I wanted to put behind me.
You've obviously nodded out so much, but do you feel angry at all? You talk about it, and you seem so humble with the information. You know, it's not something you've been to therapy, obviously, but do you feel angry?
No, I just feel a huge sense of social justice is the best way to put it. Like, I feel very fortunate that I have an ability to at least talk to people and share this experience, you know, and hopefully by sharing that experience, whenever people are in situations where they can help somebody else who's gone through similar things, they'll hopefully help, and they'll hopefully, you know, think of it in a more empathetic way. So that's why I do it. And I suppose for me as well, it's bringing people together that can actually make a difference in the inequality that I see there. I don't think kids should be in nighttime only hostels, but there's a bigger issue I'm trying to tackle, which is, well, what happens when they come out of care? They end up going into homeless hostels, and a huge proportion of the people we have in homeless accommodation right now, they're kids that are just transitioned out of care, just turned 18. That's not okay. Like, that how is that okay? You know, so we need to support those kids, that even when they come out of this system, that they can go on and stand on their own 2 feet and lead prosperous lives. So that's more important to me than just being angry for angry's sake. I'd much rather channel that towards trying to help people and trying to reach back and fix things where I can. But I'm only one person, so I'm not trying to boil the ocean here.
You are incredible. Patricia McMahon has said, my heart goes out to you, Deborah. No child should go through what you went through. You are an inspiration. There's lots to get through. Education has been always so important to you, and in a way it saved you, but only because you had somebody, whether it was the woman in the Focus Ireland or somebody that said, oh, I'm going to choose to challenge. I'm not going to accept what I'm being told, and I'm going to fight for you. Tell us a little bit about education and those key people who helped you.
Yeah, so when I was in the second hostel for young girls, I didn't want to go to school, right? Because everyone else is going home, like, to their mum and dad to talk about their holidays to Benidorm and Paul's Boutique bags and all of this other fun stuff. And I can't go anywhere. I can't afford anything. I'm going to a place where the kitchen is literally locked. There's bars on the windows in the kitchen. Like, it wasn't a fun experience. But there was a woman who worked in Focus Ireland. Her name is Margaret. She was really great. she ended up setting up this star chart system. So you couldn't get makeup for my skin tone in Dublin. Still can't easily, but you definitely couldn't then for like in the pharmacy for, you know, for like €10, the way my friends were able to get all their pan stick and whip it on. I just didn't have, I couldn't afford to do that unless I went to places like Brown Thomas. And so of course foundations like €35–40. I got €2.50 pocket money a week. I was be spending all year saving for a bit of foundation. So she set up a star chart system. If I went to school every day for 3 months, I get a piece of my favorite makeup at the end. And it sounds like something ridiculous and so small, but it's definitely one of the reasons I'm able to tell you this story today, because it kept me in school. It was the only way you could probably get me to school at the time. And I'm so thankful to her for taking the time to think of something that would work for me, as opposed to, right, you're just a bad kid because you don't want to go to school, you have to go to school. Trying to work with me to try and see how you could engage me in school. Later on, when I got pregnant, the people who own my care home, who I call my foster parents, and who ran it, they ended up, I was going to have to move out into these state-run, and I'm so sorry for using the term, but it's just what they were called at the time. I don't know if it's still what they're called in Tussla, but at the time when I was in care, you had to move into a mother and baby home. That was just what they were called. And I'd heard really terrifying stories about them, and in terms of like the level of support that you got, and the fact that if you screwed up, you got your baby taken off you, you know, and that's scary for any new mum, never mind a new mum that's 14 hearing this, you know. So they completely changed the status and purpose, registration, everything of their units. So I could stay, they had 2 houses, so they could keep the other one for mainstream kids and then keep this one for people who got pregnant when they were in care. And while I was there, they supported me to stay in education. They gave me 8 hours babysitting a week, which meant that, like, for example, they could drop my son to creche for me if I was running late for school, or if I wanted to stay in school and do a bit more extra study, they would pick him up for me and bring him home. Or if he got his needles, I could get a little bit of sleep before, you know, I had to get up for school in the morning. So they were key people for me in terms of helping me stay in education and learn how to be a mom while having that support network there before I ended up moving out when I had to go to college. And so when I was in college and when I was obviously working and training as an accountant, being a single mom, it was grand because I'd had that, you know, I'd had that foundation and that support for so long that just really gave me the confidence to be able to get on with it and do whatever I need to do. And Liam is the most, my son's name is Liam, and he's the most amazing kid, and he makes me so proud every day. So he made it very easy, to be fair.
Oh my goodness, and how proud he must be of his mum as well. What an incredible woman. Did your mum get to meet Liam?
Yes, she did. She got to meet Liam, and it's so funny because it's a painful thing for me that she's definitely not here. Hugely painful, because towards the end, she passed away, and towards the end, we were really finding a way to. I was starting to understand her better, you know, obviously because I was a mom now, and she had my back nearly more so than my dad did in some ways. Like this is such a random story, but when I first had my baby, I was in the hospital room, and you know, I was 15 when I had him. By the time I had him, but I didn't want to breastfeed. The idea just seemed really alien to me. I don't know why. It just never took to it. And my dad came up to my hospital room, like, and the first thing he says is like, "You're breastfeeding that child. Your child's gonna have brain damage if you don't." Like, just completely outdated way of thinking of things. And my mom was on my side. She was like, "Oh no, it's not like that anymore. Let her do it. You know, leave her alone. It's fine." And I think that's the first time ever my mom's ever stuck up for me, especially you know, with my dad. It's always the other way around. So it's just going to signify, like, that was literally after I first had my son. You know, he really was the best thing to happen to me. And he brought our family together. You know, it brought me and my mum together. So yeah, she got to meet him. We got a Christmas together, which was really lovely. Sorry. Yeah, and I'm really thankful for that. And I even have a picture of her up in his room as well. So yeah. Well, I didn't bring any tissue because I didn't plan on crying. I'm so sorry.
I mean, you did lose your mum. Your mum had terrible problems, I suppose, and it was a real tragedy for you. But I suppose it gave you more of an understanding of what she was going through with being a mother as well. So there was more ground that you could share. And obviously, that was a massive loss to you. but you've just kept going. You always wanted to be an accountant, which is incredible. And you did it and you smashed it. Why accountancy?
So I don't really know. Like, maths is just genuinely the only class in school, and it's the typical thing. I liked accounting in school. You know, I didn't actually have accounting in my school, but I liked maths and I liked sitting down and figuring things out. And a couple of people in my family had previously been accountants. Not that I had any sort of understanding of that, but maybe subconsciously somewhere. But ever since I was literally a little girl, if you asked me what I wanted to be, it wasn't like ballerina or whatever. I'd always say accountant. And I knew from a really young age that I wanted to be a chartered accountant in particular, which is even weirder. So there you go. But and it's great, the qualification in the family. It's brought me into this Chartered Accounting Ireland family. Like, I love it. And even the global family, it's really lovely. And the movement in the organization by all of its members to try and make it more inclusive and open it up to more socioeconomic groups and things like that. It's just really, really lovely to see. So yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so happy I chose accounting. Yeah.
However, you've ended up in EY now, moving it more into the HR, the people side of things. And, you know, diversity and inclusion, it's massively topical. It's something that before was a bit of a box ticking exercise. People realize we can't do that anymore. We've had the Me Too movement. We've had Black Lives Matter. We've had such a turbulent year. I mean, how optimistic do you feel for the future in terms of people calling out, like Monica, Emma's sister, calling out when people are wrong and challenging bias?
So excited. Yeah, so excited for the future. As in, I think particularly with this new generation coming up, they're social justice warriors. Just like, you don't even, they educate us, you know, they educate us, and that is pretty incredible. But they're not only just like educated, they're motivated, and they're going off and starting companies and starting initiatives while they're in school, you know, which is really incredible. So I'm really excited. I do think that we'll see a huge, I think naturally COVID has brought a level of an increase in community compassion for each other and community solidarity. Something that was definitely missing before. I know in Dublin anyways, there was this joke of you can't even ask your neighbours for sugar anymore. I always ask my neighbours for sugar and to drop my kids to school if they can. But anyways, that's a whole other thing. But, you know, I think it's brought this really lovely thing of looking out for each other, and I hope that grows, and I hope that empathy, that compassion, that understanding, that it people don't just grow out of come out of inequality. That shift doesn't happen naturally. It's going to take all of us to help support each other, to enable us all to just be a more equal society, and bringing everyone along with us. So yeah, I'm super optimistic and excited, and I think it's very much so a clearer reality, or maybe a more realizable objective of having a more equal society post-COVID. Thanks, unfortunately, I know it's been horrific and people have lost their lives. It has brought a weird time for reflection and togetherness. That is something I hope that we keep coming out of this.
Deborah, just to empower the family. I mean, we've eaten into the time completely. Your story is incredible. If anybody would like to ask a question, please put it in the chat, and I will definitely ask Deborah. But going back to the charity, Newry Chamber are delighted to say that they will help you with your fundraising today. You know, that's. Empower the Family is such a worthwhile cause, because literally you are giving somebody like Deborah a chance, if they do become pregnant or whatever circumstances have led them to not have that support, you know, because we are the lucky ones. And if we can help others educate themselves while their children are being looked after and safe, with a little bit of that support around them, we can do great things. We could have more Deborahs.
What a scary thought that would be. No, absolutely. No, this is it. Not more Deborahs, more educated mummies. No, absolutely. I'm joking. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was very kind of you. Oh God, I think I'm frozen now.
It's wonderful. So what we're going to do, yeah, you're still there, don't worry. If you would like to support Deborah's charity, Empower the Family, take a look in the chat box right now. Donations can be made using the PayPal link below. You can see it there. Please do help Deborah. As I said, her ambition is to deliver Ireland's first social student housing in North Dublin by September 2023. And you say you've got 50 places that you'll be able to empower 50 parents to continue.
So we've got 50 beds. So there's 20 for single parents that are 2-bedroom each, so bed for them and their child, and then 10 that are studio apartments for people coming out of state care. So altogether it's 50 beds. Yeah.
Before I leave you, what message would you like to give to the audience today? It is International Women's Day. What does that mean to you, and what could we all do today to make the world better?
I think that one of the big things that we can definitely all do is surround ourselves with people who lift us up as opposed to people who bring us down, and try to support each other and try to bring more compassion to the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, that would be my parting words of
Absolutely.
advice.
And, you know, helping others and looking and not judging. And it's so hard because we've all been, you know, our environments have shaped who we are and what we think, but by standing back and thinking differently and just helping someone else, what a difference you could make even to just one person. Deborah is maybe having a few internet problems, but thankfully at the tail end of her talk, I'm sure everyone, you would join me in saying thank you for being with us here today. And you know, it's probably important to mark that this is the first time that we've probably had a black woman or man deliver a speech for Newry Chamber, which is in one sense not right, but we'll call it out now, and we'll choose to challenge, and we'll choose to bring different speakers and make sure that we're not just looking at people who are familiar to us. That is the future. So thank you to Newry Chamber for inviting Deborah. Deborah, keep doing your brilliant work. As Una said, we need more Deborahs. Another Deborah. Thank you so much, Deborah, for telling your story, and to the Chamber for organising this. Thank you, Deborah. You're amazing. Well done, Deborah. Keep up the great work. You're an inspirational lady. Thank you for sharing your story. What an incredible day. So please do, if you can, raise some money to help Deborah in her ambitious plans, which honestly will make such a difference. And, you know, there's a project that we can give and we can make a difference right now. Deborah Somorin, thank you so much for joining us today.